Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ryan Bijan, host of Cowtown Movie Classics, and today we are continuing our celebration of Gary Cooper, one of Hollywood's greatest and most iconic leading men, with a very funny screwball comedy from 1938, directed by the legendary Ernst Lubitsch. It's Bluebeard's Eighth Wife, which pairs Gary Cooper with the fabulous Claudette Colbert. Joining me now is a very special guest. She's a prolific artist, advocate, and she's the author of the book Gary Cooper Off Camera, A Daughter Remembers. Please welcome Maria Cooper Janis. How are you doing today, Maria?
How do you do? Thank you. It's very nice to meet you, and I'm so glad that you're featuring that film because I know my father loved it, and I think he was always frustrated that he wasn't given the chance to do more comedy, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
He had a very good sense of timing, and he really enjoyed working with that kind of a character to be able to be funny.
No, and he certainly is funny. He has the timing down. And I feel like at this point in his career, he was able to mix it up a little bit. Because a lot of those early, when we think of like the earlier pre-code films, he's a much more kind of stoic leading man. He's not given a lot of great material to work with typically. But yeah, certainly in this film, he really shines.
Yeah, yeah. I think I wish they played it more on like TCM and all that.
Oh, no, definitely. Well, that's why we're trying to rectify it. We're trying to get this to an audience
Well, good
now.
for you. I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you. When we think of Gary Cooper, the icon, the image, he was certainly a very tall, striking, leading man. But at the same time, as an audience member, we find him he's very empathetic. He's very relatable as an everyman. Why is that?
It's because he 1,000% felt he was every man. I mean, he didn't I mean he even used the term, he said, I'm what are people carrying on about? I'm just average Joe American. And
Hmm.
that was in quotes. And he he wasn't acting in his life. He wasn't acting in uh the real world. And I think he in a way tried to feel that he wasn't having to act, quote unquote, in the film either, because he wanted to know the character from studying or reading or whatever. So he didn't have to feel he was acting. He could just take on that persona.
Absolutely. And he's very versatile, or he's very good in different types of roles. As I mentioned, this is a screwball comedy. We associate him a lot with Western films, adventure films. He did a little bit of everything. And do you feel like that's sort of owed to his eclectic childhood? I understand he had a very kind of rural early life in Montana, but then he had a very high education in the United Kingdom.
I think you've touched on something very interesting. Yes, I would agree that he had a pretty broad exposure. His mother was British um, by birth. Actually, she was French. I only found that out much later. She was her family was they were born. She was born near uh, the town I think it was Lyon.
Leon, oh, okay.
And the family name, of course, it was anglicized when I what knew what her maiden name was. It was Brazier, which
Hmm.
was British, but it was French. It was Brazier.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so when she was very young, she went to England, and she didn't have a British accent, but she had that way of speaking. And I think the exposure in London, my father went to a school called Dunstable
Mhm.
outside of London. And she very much felt he needed to be the edges needed to be smoothed out.
Yeah. But I think having that kind of diverse background, it does make him believable in these types of roles. Like I could totally see him on horseback, and he's just as believable as he is in something like tonight's film, or Designed for Living, where he's playing kind of a high society, or he has to navigate high society, I should say.
Right, right. That is true. That is absolutely true.
And let me ask you, as his daughter, I can't imagine it must have, well, your relationship, I imagine the relationship must have taken some work because by virtue of being an actor, a very successful actor, I'm sure he was on set 18, 19 hours a day. So was it hard for him to make time with his family?
No, it didn't seem to be.
Hmm.
No, 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 we had a lot of family time together. I mean, um, uh, well, in of course the early days they filmed on Saturdays, so
Oh, wow, yeah.
it wasn't a 2-day weekend, but we always managed as a family to do a lot of activities together, a lot of sports. You know, my mother was very athletic, and we were all always, it was either um, uh, golf or tennis or we took up scuba diving. My parents,
Wow.
of course, they brought me along into the introduced me to the wonders of the deep, uh, and and um, uh, and we traveled in France. As my father loved France, so we would travel to Europe if he had like a month in between pictures. We'd either go to visit my grandparents who lived in Long Island, out in the Hampton area, or we'd go to France or Italy or so. Um, he loved he sort of he loved the adventure of different cultures too.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I could certainly see that based on his at least his on-screen persona. I can certainly see elements of that. Now, did he take, as an artist, did he take acting seriously, or did he see it as something to pay the bills? How did he approach his career?
He was a, 100% professional. I mean,
Right, of course, yeah.
yeah, he took it seriously. Um he didn't think acting was a lesser
Oh,
endeavor. But but he wasn't consumed with it. I mean, I would say he never brought the roles home. I
mhm,
know a lot of my friends whose parents were similar to my father. Um, uh, it it seemed to be hard for them to shake the mood or the character or the this or that, and I never had any sense of that. I don't know what his trick was, but he
yeah.
kind of he left it on the sound stage or whatever. I mean, if it was a Western, and of course he enjoyed anything to do with riding and horses and the outdoors, um, and the West. Um, that was part of his nature. Uh,
Mhm,
but he loved it. But he loved he was a very rounded person. You know, he loved art. I mean,
mhm.
he and my mother would take me to museums, and it wasn't just dragging the kids through the impressionist section. You know, we'd really stop and discuss certain paintings, and uh, um, he would question me, and of course I got interested in art. I was sketching and drawing. They even when I was very little. Um, because there was no television, thank
Mhm.
goodness. But they would stick a pad of paper and crayons in front of me and say,
Yeah.
what do you see? Draw something, or what's in your head. So
So,
being 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 visually aware uh, was part of my upbringing, and I think being aware was part of my father's uh, talent as an actor too, because he really paid attention. He really paid attention to his co-star. I mean, what what dialogue was coming at him. He was really he would react to that, not how do I look, how do I sound, blah blah blah, and spit out his lines. But it was much more. Uh,
reactionary.
yeah, yeah, and he was aware of nature. I mean, of you know. He would study the way a bird flies, for instance, and then because he was very good as an artist, as because he started out that way, he would draw for me how a bird's wing works, and
Hmm.
and the different layers of feathering, and what they do, and comparing that then to an airplane. It was like that.
Yeah. Well, I was that was something that always kind of I always identified with when I read that, he had like you, he had started drawing from an early age. He was fascinated with artwork, Native American culture, all of this. And I was wondering, does a lot of his artwork still survive? Has there been a gallery presentation of any of it?
No, there hasn't been. No, no. I have a few paintings, and I have I have I have some of I have some of his sketches
Hmm.
and watercolors, but they're not that much. What I have more of is his school books,
Oh yeah.
which he proceeded to draw pictures over Wordsworth and Shelley, and when he was supposed to be, uh, I think, memorizing their writing, their poetry. He was drawing a picture of an Indian on a horse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can certainly identify with that. If you look at all of my notebooks from high school, I still have some. It's just filled with doodles and everything. So I don't blame him.
Yeah.
All right. So we're about to watch Bluebeard's Eighth Wife. What does our audience have to look forward to if they've never seen this film or seen your father in a comedy?
Well, I think they'll be surprised at how, I don't know, maybe naive he can seem as part of the character, although the character is a skirt chaser for sure. But his, as I say, the direction and the partnership of Billy Wilder, who was a very close friend, and Lubitsch in this film, of course, the dialogue, the situations are, um, you know, very almost ludicrous at times, but they really gave him a chance to be. We have a we have an Abyss, we have a cat who looks like yours.
I know, yeah, she's
Oh,
she's
he's
excited. She always likes to be part of the action.
oh, she's pretty. Well,
Yeah, her name is Olive. I don't care if you want to say hi.
oh, thank you. Oh, good. Ah, we had a Bengal. We have
Oh
three
yes.
cats, well, two cats now, but we lost the Bengal. But um,
Hmm.
Bengal looked very much like her.
I know it's a beautiful coat. And your father was a Bengal Lancer, so I don't know if
Yeah,
there's a connection.
exactly.
And sorry, I had to get that in there.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful film too. Have you shown that?
I haven't yet. I was kind of considering that, but maybe next year. Maybe we can mix it up.
Okay. Okay. But the Bluebeard, let's say it's a very, very ditzy kind of film in a way. But there was one scene, there was one event that I would amuse you, I think, when they were filming, they are having champagne and caviar. It's
Hmm.
very, you know, romantic, and he's trying to woo her and convince her. And when they were filming, uh, it was very, very, very hot in LA, and it was on the soundstage, but they didn't have air conditioning, maybe a little fan, and the whole sequence, that whole day, there was tremendous heat, not much air, and they were doing, for some reason, I don't know why, they did a lot of takes, a lot of takes. And in those days, the good old days, what they were eating was real caviar, and they were drinking real champagne.
Oh no.
So I think as they redid each scene, um, uh, everybody got a little more relaxed and happy.
Yeah.
And with the heat, and there was a lot of champagne consumed, I was told.
Hmm.
And what happened for poor Claudette, because she was a very close family friend, um, she got very, very sick. I mean, the champagne just got to her, plus the 114-degree heat in the stage, and she got very nauseous and really violently sick. She threw up, and so violently that she had some caps on her front teeth, and the caps came off.
Oh
So
man, wow.
all of a sudden, more or less in the front of her mouth, she doesn't have a mouth that could be photographed, and they had to close the set. They had to stop shooting for, I think, a couple of days until she would get to the dentist and get the new caps made and all of that. And
Well, I'll definitely keep an eye out for that scene and just have
yeah,
that in mind.
when they're
Well,
happily drinking away, you can remember.
all right. Well, Maria, thank you so much. If you're in the audience, please stick around after the film so you can hear the rest of our conversation. Without further ado, it's Gary Cooper and Claudette Colbert. Excuse me, I'm
Thank,
sorry.
thank you.
Sorry, let me redo that part. I misspoke. Without further ado, it's Gary Cooper and Claudette Colbert in Bluebeard's Eighth Wife.
I think it was a great pleasure for my father because Claudette was a close family friend. So I have lots of photographs. In fact, I think there's a picture in my book of everyone played a lot of tennis in those days, and I think there's a picture of Claudette on a weekend over at our home, down on the tennis court and sitting, waiting for her turn at mixed doubles or whatever. But she was, she wasn't. She was a very natural uh gal. She was wonderful. She wasn't, quote, actressy, if you know what I mean.
That's good to know, honestly. And I'm not just saying this. You can ask my girlfriend. Claudette Colbert is one of my great old Hollywood crushes.
She was doing a show here in Broadway, on Broadway, and my mother and I went to see her. I mean, obviously in the probably late 60s, early 70s. And we went, we went to see her afterwards, and she was taking off her makeup, and I know she and my mother were chatting, and she said, well, she said, I always do my own makeup. She said, who knows my face better than me?
That's
And
true.
so she didn't have the uh, official theater makeup person, putting her together. She said, get out of here. I'm doing this myself. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, I think I've heard, I don't know if it was on this film, it was one of the early Paramounts. I think I've heard stories about how she insisted on being photographed from a certain angle from her profile because, like you said, she knew her face
She
better
knew her
than
face.
anyone
She
else.
knew she knew what made her look the best. And she was able to ask for that.
Hmm. Well, let me ask you, and I'm sure you probably get a variation of this question a lot. Now, you grew up in this household. Obviously, you have nothing else to compare it to because that's just the way you were raised. But do you remember, was there a moment in your childhood when you realized, like, oh, my dad is someone special? Like, not everyone else's dad is a movie star.
Well, I didn't think of it in those terms. I mean, movie star.
Hmm.
Um, uh, some of my friends' parents were actors or actresses, so but many were also not. I think the first time my parents didn't let me see my father in a film until I think it was my seventh or eighth birthday, and we ran at home. We had a 16 millimeter projector. We didn't have a screening room or anything. And we ran The Plainsman. And
Oh, yeah.
that's the first movie that I ever saw my father in.
The Cecil B. DeMille epic. Yeah. And that
Yeah,
was the first film he did with DeMille, right? He did a few of them.
I'm not sure. I think that was the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And uh so there was one scene. Well, it was very helpful for me that was what it was too, because um as I say, we had a 16 millimeter projector and a screen that we put up at the end of the living room. And my father was running the projector. And there's one scene there where the Indians have captured my father's character, and they're torturing him, and he's hung by his arms, by his wrists, sort of, like that. He's hung over a bonfire, and
Hmm.
then they're slowly lowering him into it to try to get him to talk, I guess.
Yeah.
And 7, 8 years old, I thought, oh my, thank God that's my father, and he's gonna,
Yeah.
what's happening? And I was upset. It was scary. So I sort of turned around desperately, and I looked at my father, and there he was behind the projection machine. And he sort of moved aside, and he sort of smiled and winked at me. And that was, boom, that was the moment when I realized, fantasy, reality,
Yeah.
fantasy, reality. And I never mixed the two up again.
Oh,
But
that's good.
it was a very helpful life lesson.
Oh, certainly. Let's see, I'm trying to think. So, your father famously, well, actually, growing up, like you mentioned Claudette Colbert, he had a lot of famous friends in the industry. Who are some of the other people you remember hanging out around the house?
Oh, Jimmy Stewart was very close
Hmm.
to my father. And uh, Ingrid Bergman was uh, geez,
Well, that's a good
I-
sort of segue. Ingrid Bergman, of course, he did For Whom the Bell Tolls, based on a
yes.
famous Hemingway novel. Just like we're doing today, we're doing A Farewell to Arms as well. And
Oh,
I
are you?
understand
Oh, good. That's wonderful.
it's a fabulous film. And actually, we're showing this film, Bluebeard's Eighth Wife. We're doing Devil in the Deep, Bluebeard's Eighth Wife, and then Farewell to Arms. I thought the comedy, it'd be good to break it up a little bit, something a little more lighthearted in the middle, and then
That's You're a very good programmer, I would say. I mean,
oh
no,
no,
but that's very interesting, and I'm glad because it gives the audience who may not, be the younger generation, may not know that much about uh, Gary Cooper. It gives them a chance to really see the versatility, and he was very versatile. It
mhm,
wasn't just sitting on a horse. He was a terrific rider. He did a lot of his early stunt work, which didn't help his back and
for
all of that.
sure.
But the versatility was, um, I think, um, one of his assets, because he was very comfortable either in blue jeans or in white tie and tails.
Hmm. And he looked great, obviously. He suited each persona very well.
Yeah, yeah, and he enjoyed it. I mean, he hated fittings, the
Sure.
wardrobe. That was boring. But I think he enjoyed being able to. Uh, I think any creative person, when you want to stretch, you want to grow, you want to be able to play different roles or paint different styles, or I mean, you have to follow your own nature,
Right.
um, but just to be stereotyped in one category, uh, I think would have been deadly for him. And luckily, he didn't have to step away.
Absolutely. Yeah, like, well, that's what's great about him is, like I said, he's just as appropriate in any one of these genres in a way that it's believable. Unlike, let's say, which I'm a big John Wayne fan. I love John Wayne, of course, but there's the John Wayne cowboy persona. So if he was to kind of stray from that path, maybe the audience wouldn't accept it as much.
I think you're right. Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm
I think
curious. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, no, no. I was just saying that I think being a European playboy, or average Joe American, or the Western hero, um, or whatever. I mean, I think somebody he was asked what made him choose the roles that he chose, and that he said that he wanted to be able to try to portray the best a man can be. So taking a role like Sergeant York, like Alvin York, World War One hero. Um, I think one of his joys was, and challenges, but made him really feel, you know, um, feel that getting up to go to work was worth it. Was when he played the role of Lou Gehrig in Pride of the Yankees.
Oh, yes, yeah, of
As
course.
we're heading into baseball, at the end of baseball season now.
Yeah.
But he loved that, and to portray a hero like Gehrig, to portray Alvin York, to portray there's an interesting movie called The Court Martial of Billy Mitchell,
Hmm.
Have you seen that, or have
I
you shown it?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Take a look at it. I mean, if you were, if you're able to, Billy Mitchell was a real person, and he was court-martialed, and he was the military person who advocated um, uh, the success of aircraft carriers and how important they could be in America's defense. And he basically, he didn't follow orders and all of one thing and another. He was court-martialed for
Hmm.
sticking to his guns about how important air power could be for America's defense. And
Hmm.
then the aircraft carrier development was, of course, part of that.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll definitely check it
but
out.
Rod Steiger is his main co-star.
Oh yeah, Rod's another great actor.
Yeah, but he's a wonderful actor. And so anyway, it's a he really enjoyed playing many different types of characters, but
Hmm.
also, you know, sadly, the last film my father made was called The Naked Edge
Yes, yeah.
with Deborah Carr.
Hmm.
And I mean, she was wonderful, and a friend of the family. Um, uh, and the picture sadly did not do well
Oh.
for one reason, because the whole premise of the film is that you have to think that the character Gary Cooper plays is a murderer,
Hmm.
and the audience wouldn't buy it.
Really? I mean, that would have been an interesting twist. It would have, I would have just to see him in that role. I think it would have been worth the price of admission to consider that.
Well, they just didn't didn't figure that Cooper could ever be a murderer. And the suspense of the film, I, I think he was a lawyer.
Hmm.
Um, and but they think, he was supposed to have tried to do his wife in, and I don't remember the the details, but it was wonderfully directed. And it was from an interesting story. I think wasn't John O'Hara. It was called The Last Train to Babylon, I think, or The First Train to Babylon.
Hmm.
First Train to Babylon. But anyway, the last film thing that he really did was a documentary, which I hope it gets shown. I think it is seeable now. A documentary called The Real West, because my
Hmm.
father really wanted to set straight the misconceptions of what the opening up of the West was for America, for this country, and um, the covered wagons going west, the gold rush, the Native Americans, and what we did, which was he was always very angry at how our country handled
Of course. And let's
the
talk
Indian
about that a
situation.
little. Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
No, no, no.
Well, I was going to ask because on your website it says that if they purchase your book, Gary Cooper Off Camera, and I noticed the funds from that the book sales go towards what is the name of the foundation? It's the Gary
Well,
Cooper.
it's the Cooper Endowment for Native American and Indigenous peoples at the School of Cinematic Arts at USC.
Hmm.
I really felt that my father had a great love and respect for the American Indian, for their culture, and growing up in Helena, Montana, of 1901, the early 1900s. Um, they were his first friends were the American Indian children. And I think he learned so much about life. And I think that probably very much shaped his personality too, being able
Hmm.
to be involved with the culture, with the Indian culture, with the way of life, with the love of nature, the
Hmm.
love and respect of nature. I mean, that he was tremendously. I mean, I think he'd be leading the marches on climate change and on, destroying habitat and and the wanton killing of animals, shooting. I mean, he was a hunter, but those were the days where you either you either hunted and you ate the meat that you shot, or the birds that you shot.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, he never would have hunted in Africa today. In the very early days, there weren't endangered species. I mean, it was such a totally different world, as we know.
I know, I can imagine. Now, I mentioned, in 1932, he makes the film A Farewell to Arms, based on a famous novel by Ernest Hemingway. But this was before he met Hemingway, correct? How did that friendship come about?
That came about because my parents, I was sort of young at the time, um, uh, they were um, they were friends with a man named Averell Harriman. He was the governor of New York
Hmm.
State at one point, and Harriman wanted to start a ski resort, and he got an Austrian mountaineer uh, expert to come over, and they scouted out a lot of different places, and they chose Sun Valley, Idaho.
Hmm.
Uh, so my parents went to Sun Valley, and actually they were with Harriman when he was with his Austrian. He was a count, I think. He said, "This is, the mountains are perfect. There's a valley. The temperature of the weather should be good in the valley. You should get good snow in the mountains." So they chose Sun Valley. Uh, he built the resort, or he started it, and there was a train line right up. A Union Pacific train line went right into Ketchum, Idaho.
Hmm.
So uh, they they opened this valley, and they first built a little inn called the Challenger Inn, where guests could stay, and then they built the famous Sun Valley Lodge. But that was in the process. And the head of public relations for the valley um, wanted to try to entice people there, not only the celebrities, but they wanted to get people to come, and of course they wanted Gary Cooper to come because that was a big draw. And Ernest Hemingway was, I think, moving around, and he was very much in print, or in the public eye, because of his incredible writing.
Hmm.
And so they enticed Hemingway to go to Sun Valley because there was good hunting. Down in the Low Country, there was wonderful bird shooting, and pheasant and duck. Hi, Nicole. I'm doing a Zoom call. Okay. Um, uh, so they got Hemingway to come out there, and they introduced. I I think maybe my father was the carrot. you
Hmm.
know, and Hemingway had been a Gary Cooper fan. I was told by him, later on, and so he was happy to meet Gary Cooper, and hey, there was good hunting and fishing, you know, nothing to lose. So that's how they met. And of course, they became fast friends, really very, very close friends, and stayed in touch the rest of Hemingway's life and the rest of my father's life.
That's good to know. At least Ernest Hemingway wasn't like, you butchered my words, you butchered my work on film. But no, I'm glad that he was a fan of your father before they met.
Oh yeah, very much. And I mean, the license that Hollywood took, I don't know, line by line, what annoyed Hemingway.
Sure.
But I don't think the films themselves bothered him. I think Farewell to Arms was was wonderful to work with Helen Hayes. I mean, that was
Hmm.
something that my father loved. And of course, For Whom the Bell Tolls with Ingrid Bergman was a wonderful film. And one of Hemingway's sons, Patrick, who's friends of our family, as was his other son, Jack. Um, uh, Patrick said that Hemingway actually patterned the character Robert Jordan in For Whom the Bell Tolls after a Gary Cooper character, a Gary Cooper persona,
Hmm.
which
Well,
is interesting.
yeah.
Heroic, person of integrity, courage, and sensitivity.
Well, it certainly sounds like he was all these things in real life as well.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he
All
certainly
right.
was.
Well, Maria, is there anything else you're working on right now you want the audience to know about?
Well, there's the next next year is the sort of a kind of a 100th anniversary of Gary Cooper, not his 100th birthday, but his presence in the world of cinema. And we're working on several things on that. And I'm working also on uh, uh, finishing memoir that my husband, who was the concert pianist Byron Janis,
Hmm.
uh, sadly passed away earlier this year. He had written a memoir, which he had finished before, so I'm working on putting that together with with the help of a wonderful editor, editor, publisher. Uh,
Hmm.
so I'm sort of working on those two projects.
And actually, where can we buy your book? Where is it available?
Well, certainly Amazon. I mean, Barnes and Noble, wherever they still exist. I'm, I'm not sure. Actually, there's a wonderful. I don't know if you've run the documentary, um, uh, Gary Cooper, American Life, American Legend, which I think TCM ran it. Um, Clint Eastwood was the host and narrator, and my husband wrote the theme music for it. He
Oh,
he
wow.
he composed the Gary Cooper theme. I said that I wanted a special theme that sort of is heard whenever within the film the focus is on my father. So my husband, who was performing all over the world, but also loves composing. Uh, so he wrote the Gary Cooper theme for that, which is, but it's a wonderful look at my father's life, and of course Clint Eastwood is he's just a perfect host narrator. I was so thrilled that he was part of it.
Oh, of course. Well, Maria Cooper Janis, once again, thank you so much for your time.
Well, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much, and I hope your audience continues to learn more about my father's films. The last so-called Western that my father made, I don't know if you've run this film, is called The Hanging Tree.
The Hanging Tree, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you've shown that yet, but he really loved that. He loved doing that. I think maybe partially because it had to do with the days in Montana, or it had to do with the days of the gold rush, really, and what that mentality did to the people who were moving west. And it was the first American film that Maria Schell made, the wonderful German actress. And
Yes.
I think it was Carl Malden's first film,
Oh,
also. And also, no, excuse me, I'm wrong. It was George C. Scott's first film, I think.
oh, wow. So that's quite a cast.
It's an incredible cast, and I think it's a movie that hasn't been shown too much. So
I'll look
uh,
into maybe next year we can do something for the anniversary. We can put something together and maybe we could show that.
well, let me I'd love to, help you with that if that's possible.
Well, again, once again, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Enjoyed talking with you. Thank you, and good luck with your wonderful festival.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if you're in the audience, I hope you enjoyed today's film as much as we enjoyed talking about it. Once again, my name is Ryan Bijan. We'll see you next time.